We started coming to Brentwood in 2001, and we're living in Franklin at the time, and then moved down south to Thompson Station. And at that time, thoughts of a South Campus, it was actually known as the South Campus at the time, were just sort of dreams and ideas in people's minds. But I guess it was about 2008, 2009. And it really started to come together. I guess they formed an exploratory team, and they all met and prayed and really tried to discover what the Lord had for us down south. And so when the time was right, when they felt like the Lord had made it clear that this is exactly what we were supposed to do as a church, we started to meet as the South Campus, which was subsequently named Station Hill. And we started meeting periodically, and then it became an every week thing. We were meeting at night on Sunday nights in Hudson Hall. And Jay started being able to preach every week and those kinds of things. And we were really training together, learning to get to know each other, but getting to know our community that we were about to go and serve. And, you know, there's nothing like going to church in your own community. And I think the way that Brentwood Baptist does church is very special. And we could either keep that all here in Brentwood and everybody drive 30 minutes, an hour, to get to this one place, or we could spread that out and we could plant churches in those communities that had the same DNA, the same thing that was special about Brentwood Baptist, and we could plant it there in that community, and then hopefully reach people in those communities who maybe aren't willing to drive that 30 minutes, that hour, whatever it may be, so that they can get to a thriving, growing, spirit-filled church like Brentwood Baptist. And so that's why we launched Station Hill, essentially, is so that we could bring the way we do church there. We just felt like God was perfectly situating us with a pastor who lived in that area, who had a call from the Lord to go and start this new work. And then, 150 or so of us who said, yeah, we'll go with him. We'll leave, the great facilities, the great programs, the great preaching, the great worship, everything here on the Brentwood campus. We'll leave all that so that we can go and do church in our community. And we really didn't know what it would look like. And honestly, a lot of us thought it would be a sacrifice to go and do something like that, to leave what we had known. But in reality, it's been the greatest blessing ever to be able to start a new work and watch it grow and watch what God can do with what you're willing to give and what you're seemingly willing to give up. He can do amazing things with that, and we've seen that at Station Hill for sure. Very quickly outgrew the daycare, so moved over, and half of our church was at the school across the street, and half of us were in this lease space that we had made into a church. And it would be raining cats and dogs, and people are just being faithful, and they're walking up the hill in the mud, and to go to Sunday school over at the school building. And then the Lord blessed us with so many people that it became really obvious that we were going to have to build a building. And so in 2015, we built the current building that we are in, and really quickly outgrew that too. Spring Hill and Thompson Station and that whole area is such a fast growing area that the people just keep coming. The Lord keeps bringing them to us. And so we're very excited that now we're building a new education building. Our students and our adult classrooms will be located in that new building. And so we'll be able to more effectively minister in those areas. And that's very, very exciting. I know as a parent of a student, that's really, really exciting. Well, I think originally it was about geography. Let's go do church closer to the people who need to hear the gospel. And that's still part of the reason, but I think more than anything, now it's evolved into let's go to a different context, and it may not be that our campuses are very far apart, but the demographic that attends that campus, the types of people that we can minister to, have different needs as it relates to church. And so for us to be able to go and do church the way Brentwood does church, but shape that for the context. I think that's really important. You know, a church like Ave South or Lockland or Woodbine, those are three very different areas, and they have very different types of people who they're trying to reach. And so for them to be able to shape and mold their worship and their discipleship and even their outreach events to fit the context that they are in geographically, I think is really important. And so somebody that might have a barrier to coming to Brentwood would feel more welcome or more at ease coming to a campus that's in their geographical location, but that also does church the way that they feel most comfortable. And I think that's really important when it relates to starting more campuses. I think it's so important because if we don't do it, who will? We have the resources. God has blessed our church with abundant resources, and that doesn't just mean money, but it means people who have the time and the talent and the testimony really to be able to go and serve those churches that are hurting, that are declining. You know, that church building is a safe place in its community, and for it to die, for it to go away, for it to no longer exist, I think that's a sad day. And if we can identify that area is under church, or that it needs another healthy, growing, thriving congregation, and we feel like we have the resources to be able to pour into those ones that are there, that are desperately trying to keep it going and keep it afloat, then I think, why would we not do that? Why would we not send people out? I mean, that's what we've always been about. You know, let's go and minister where we live, work, and play. Let's go and share the gospel where we live, work, and play. And so if we have people who have the willingness, who have the calling, who have the desire and the giftedness to go to help a struggling congregation, why would we not do that? And then they plant themselves in their own community and minister where they live, work, and play, and the gospel spreads and the church grows, and then all of a sudden it's thriving, and then it really becomes that safe place for the community again, that one place that they can look at and they can know there's help there, there's hope there, there's truth there. And that's what we ultimately want, is for people to drive by and know, you know, this is what this church is about. And so I wouldn't ever doubt the reasons that we go and help churches that are struggling, because if we don't, who will? This is what God's calling us to. Are we going to be obedient? Or are we just going to sit in our comfortable pew? You know, no, of course not. We're going to be obedient. We're going to step out in faith, and we're going to believe that God has something around the corner for those guys, and let's be a part of that. Why would we not want to be a part of that? Mike, you know, has this vision that is clearly from the Lord, that we know as the Middle Tennessee Initiative. And you know, God has planted this vision of healthy congregations all around Middle Tennessee, so that we can reach people, you know, in the areas of healthcare, education, and poverty. And so when other churches found out that we might be willing to lend our resources, lend our people, lend our talents to them, I think they started coming out of the woodwork and started asking, you know, could you guys help us in this area? You know, we could really use some people that help with worship. We could really use some help locating a senior pastor. We can, all of these areas, and our staff and our lay leaders are so talented that I think it was really intriguing and out of the ordinary that another church would say, hey, let me help you. And so, I think we received many calls and many requests for help. And, I know that Jason Dukes has played a huge part in, sort of vetting and figuring out where we can help the most, where we can be the most effective, where the gospel message could, be the most effective, what's there that we can build from, and then knowing how to take our people that have those talents that are missing maybe in this one area in this church that's struggling and build them up. I think that is a big job for him, but I think he does a great job of helping us to understand where we can help and how we can help, and then putting the right people in place so that we can help. Mike has clearly communicated his vision for the Middle Tennessee Initiative and 100 healthy congregations, and so I think that comes about in several different ways. Obviously we've started campuses from scratch, but we also are planting churches. We're training church planters. We're sending them out to areas in Middle Tennessee that are underchurched, and then there's also church renewals where churches that are struggling, maybe in a particular area or in multiple areas, barely sort of on the brink of survival, are calling, saying, help us, please. And so if we can not recreate the wheel, but go in and start with what's there, and then help them to get healthy, then all of a sudden that becomes just another one of those healthy congregations that's serving their community, and that their people can reach their communities for the gospel. I think my prayer for Brentwood Baptist would be that we would just keep in step with the Lord. He has directed our steps, and sometimes those are small steps, and sometimes those are really big, giant leaps. And so my prayer is just that we would never get ahead of him, but that we would always be just right in step, following him exactly where he wants us to be, that we would never become stingy with our resources, our time, our talent, our treasure, our testimony, but we would always be willing to send those out for the sake of the gospel. My prayer is that MTI and the goals that we have set as a church, that we feel like God has led us to as a church, would be realized, and that God would get all the glory for that. 100 healthy congregations, that's only through the Lord. Only the Lord can do that. And so, I pray that we'll look back 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and say, look what the Lord did. Isn't he amazing? And isn't it amazing that he chose us to be involved in it, that he chose us to be used to accomplish those goals, and his purpose is to build his kingdom? That's my prayer. That would be amazing.